Hi, everyone. Welcome to our parent information training. Here we have Kori Visor-Lawrence. She is our audiologist in Heartspring Outpatient. So I'll hand it over to you, Kori.
Good morning, or whatever it is when you're watching this. I apologize if you hear my dog barking in the background. I'm working from home today and he's just being a good old guard dog. So February is Tinnitus Awareness Month. So in order to honor Tinnitus Awareness Month, I'm going to talk a little bit today about noise-induced hearing loss and hearing protection. So what are some of the things that you can do to avoid tinnitus, but especially what can you do for your kiddos? So we will go ahead and get started here. We're going to talk about exactly what is noise-induced hearing loss. There are several different types of hearing loss. In the last video I came on, we talked about conductive hearing loss, sensorineural hearing loss. Noise-induced hearing loss is a form of sensorineural hearing loss, which means that the hearing loss happened due to damage within the cochlea. And the cochlea is that little hearing organ that's shaped like a snail down here. So noise-induced hearing loss happens specifically because inside of that snail-shaped organ, we have tiny little hair cells called sterocilia. And those sterocilia take the incoming vibrations, turn it into electrical impulses, and then send that upwards towards the brain. And those sterocilia can be damaged when we've listened to something too loud, too long, and that just builds up over time. And that can lead to the noise-induced hearing loss, which is permanent because you are changing the structure of the inside of the ear. I'll show a couple of pictures here of what those hair cells look like. We've got a drawing up top, normal hair cells. They're in this beautiful little row that's arced. And then we get to damaged. So you can see that they're not in that beautiful little arc anymore. And then when we get to severely damaged, they're not even in the shape that they were originally. The picture at the bottom, that is actually anatomy photos from cadavers, but you can see there how they look when they're damaged, and that creates that noise-induced hearing loss. So when we talk about who is affected by noise-induced hearing loss, anyone can be affected by noise-induced hearing loss. This typically doesn't happen until we're older in age, and we've been around a lot of loud sounds. It definitely depends on where you live and what you do. Do you work in construction? Do you sit in an office all day? What are your hobbies? Are you riding a motorcycle? All of these things come into factors on who is affected. But age-wise, when we're getting into that preteen, teenage years, we're seeing about 13 to 18%. And recently that number is only growing. And I'll talk about why it's growing in a little bit, but then 1 in 4 adults have some form of noise-induced hearing loss. And again, depending on where you live and what you do for a living, that may seem like not enough, and it may seem like too much. So we'll talk a little bit about the features of noise-induced hearing loss. So noise-induced hearing loss can be temporary. If you've ever gone to a concert and not worn hearing protection and you walk out and you're like, ooh, that doesn't sound as sharp as it used to, or my ears are ringing. That is a form of noise-induced hearing loss. So typically things will return to normal, but that first, when you get out of the concert and things are very loud, that's kind of what noise-induced hearing loss can be like if we're not continuing to protect our hearing. So it's kind of like a little taste of what could come. So even when we do have it temporarily, that is still going to affect us long-term because it is a system that builds upon itself. So I talked a little bit about that ringing in your ears or that buzzing, and that's what we call tinnitus. You may hear tinnitus be referred to as tinnitus. There's really not a formally accepted way, if it's right or wrong to say it. I say tinnitus because tinnitus and itis sounds to me like an infection, and it's not. So most audiologists will say tinnitus, but you may hear some say tinnitus. It's all the same, it doesn't matter. But that tinnitus can be really debilitating for some people. If you have ringing in your ears all the time, all day, it can really affect quality of life. We sometimes see that depending on a person's natural disposition, and if they have tinnitus, tinnitus can lead to some suicidal thoughts. We can get into a lot of depression because you cannot get away from the sound, and there is nothing medically that we can do yet to fix tinnitus. Once it's there, it's permanent. And then some of the other features, if you have hearing loss, you're going to walk out of the concert and be like, what? What happened? What did you say? I can't understand you very well. And then you'll start turning up your other devices to compensate for that. So let's go on and we'll talk about some of the causes. And it is as simple as it sounds. So the causes of noise-induced hearing loss are listening to things for too loud, for too long. So one of the reasons that we are seeing that number of noise-induced hearing loss increase among preteens and teenagers, and it's always been this way. We're always listening to music too loud. I think back to like 70s kids in a car, like blaring in their cool stereos. But now we are in this era where we have AirPods. So we are putting the sound source closer to our ear, directly to our ear. And these kids are just blaring volume. So we don't have really control over that. A lot of parents don't know how loud their kids are listening to stuff. Towards the end of the PowerPoint, I will talk about some ways that you can have control over that. But listening to earbuds too loud, even something as simple as being in the marching band, those things can be risky. Concerts, like I talked about, if your kids got a summer job and they are mowing lawns, those kinds of things, being in a shop, hobbies, motorcycles, snowmobiles. And then when I am out in more rural communities, so when I'm not at Heartspring, I also work as an educational audiologist. So I'm out in a lot of schools, and I work for a pretty rural school district. I'm out in Sumner County, and I'm seeing a fairly high number of kids, younger and younger, have noise-induced hearing loss because of work. They're out farming, they're on combines, and then recreationally we get into shooting guns. And I'll talk a little bit about the difference in those sound levels in the next slide, but those are all things that can be risky for kids when it comes to hearing, but adults as well. I have a note over here on the side that genes do play a factor in this. We do know that some people are just going to be predispositioned to be at a greater risk for noise-induced hearing loss. So something to keep in mind, if you see that being a family trend, then that's something you want to keep in mind for your own kids and protecting their hearing as well. So we're going to talk about understanding loud and how loud is loud. Over to the right, the picture we have here is an audiogram with just some everyday sounds and what that looks like. In the middle, this little purple, we call it a speech banana. Those are where really important speech sounds land on an audiogram. So if you have normal hearing, which is anything 20 decibels, which is on the left side, you'll be able to understand all your speech sounds. As hearing loss sets in, say you go have a mild hearing loss, you're losing some of those speech sounds. And that's where understanding speech is going to get really difficult for you. But when we talk about understanding loud, you can see up here at 0, leaves rustling. So obviously very, very quiet. We get to a baby crying, a dog barking, lawnmowers, and then down at the very bottom where it says about 120, we get to guns and airplanes and very, very loud things. The average concert, depending on where you are standing, is about 95 decibels. So that's pretty loud down there at the bottom. So when we're talking about understanding loud, we do measure in what we call decibels, and an increase of 10 decibels. So say moving from 10 to 20 is actually 10 times more intense. So 10 decibels doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 10 times more powerful than what we'd be listening to previously. We use an A-weighted scale. This can get very complicated. There are several different scales. Things get logarithmic. You don't need to know that. What you need to know is dBA, which is decibels. So the louder the sound, the shorter amount of time you can be exposed to it. So firecracker, here we go. 160 decibels can cause damage in the matter of seconds because it's so loud. Whereas you're doing the lawnmower, say 80 decibels, you could probably withstand that for about an hour and a half before damage starts. So the length of time really does matter. So preventing noise-induced hearing loss, and these are things that are important for your kids and important for yourself as well, because noise-induced hearing loss can be prevented. There are certain kinds of hearing loss that cannot be prevented because they're just medical in nature, but noise-induced hearing loss can be. And the best way to make sure that you're still getting to do the things you love is to teach ways to protect your hearing. So lowering the volume, duh. This is one of the simplest things you can do when you're listening to something, is lowering your volume, moving away from the noise. So say you go to a concert and your kids want to be front and center, right in the middle. It's their favorite band. They love them so much. But every 6 feet that you step away from the speaker is actually going to lower the volume by 3 decibels. So sometimes being closer is not always better. So moving away from the noise is one of the things you can do. Still go enjoy your concert, but step away from the speaker. This is true of airplanes. This is true of farm equipment, of everything, stepping away from the noise. So wearing hearing protection. There's several forms of hearing protection that I will talk a little bit about later, but this is really, really, really important, especially when we're doing super loud activities like shooting guns. That hearing protection is going to save so much grief. And then if hearing protection is not available, you can cover your ears. Looks silly, but it works. It's a function. So there's a couple things you can do for kids. So one of the things you can do is teach your kids when to use hearing protection, because again, this is going to happen over time. So the more times you're wearing hearing protection in those loud environments, the more and the longer you're just going to push off getting noise-induced hearing loss. So any kind of sporting event, fireworks, music concerts, and my husband makes fun of me all the time when we go to concerts and I put my earplugs in and he's like, oh, you look like a dweeb. And I'm like, yeah, but my hearing's better than yours. So those are just kind of things you have to teach that, it may look silly, but it matters for your hearing. So movie theaters are also ridiculously loud. That is a place that you can wear them. I understand that that's not going to happen a lot of the times, but something to keep in mind. Whenever you're doing whatever hobby you do with your kids, if you love your motorcycle and you want your kids to ride with you, hearing protection. And then playing an instrument in band. So if you are in marching band, orchestra, whatever, you can wear hearing protection. There are certain types of hearing protection that are filtered and can let you hear the very important notes that you need to hear, but block out some of the sounds you don't need to hear and take them down. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then participating in shooting sports. Like I said, one of the major things I see, especially in rural communities, is teenage boys, 15 to 18, with noise-induced hearing loss, specifically in one ear, because that's where they shoot from. I will see a kid, I'll do a hearing test, and I'm like, you're right-handed, aren't you? And they're like, yeah, I am. I can tell that's where you're shooting the gun from. So that gunshot can be so loud as a jet engine, and that can damage hearing immediately and permanently, much like fireworks. So if a fireworks, if you are in an accident with a firework and it goes off in your face, you're probably losing hearing as well. So types of hearing protection, there's a ton. You can get them Walgreens, Walmart, Amazon. You can buy them anywhere. But the important thing for you to do is look at what we call the noise reduction rating. So it's the NRR, and every hearing protection is different. Some will give you 15 decibels of protection, some will give you 35. So that's something to keep in mind when picking out what type of hearing protection you want for what activity you're doing. If you are going to be picking out hearing protection for shooting, you want to have that highest NRR. If you are picking out hearing protection, say for your kid in band, then you may not want to have the highest NRR, but you want to be somewhere in the 20s so you can take the volume down, but not block out everything that's going to be very important for them. So something to keep in mind, and one of the best things you can do if you're not sure is really call an audiologist and say, this is what my kid is doing. This is the hearing protection we're thinking of, or what hearing protection do you recommend for this activity specifically? And they will have tons of recommendations for you. There are some really great articles online as well about what's the best hearing protection for whatever activity you're doing, and that can be helpful. But there are different kinds, and you do need to keep that in mind when you're deciding what you're going to use. So here are some of our different kinds. Big old noise earmuffs. You see them on babies at basketball games, and they're so cute. So that is going to block out some of the most noise that has one of the highest NRR ratings. There are foam molds. So you just kind of squish them down and stick them in really deep. These are like the pre-molded ones. You pop them in. And then down here, these are custom ear molds, and this one has a noise filter in it. So these are more similar to what we call like musicians plugs, because they do have a filter within the noise protection system that can let in certain noises and block out certain noises. So you'll see a lot of times at concerts, the singer or the band or whatever, they'll have these in and they'll pop them in and out. You'll see that a lot because they're listening to their monitor, but they also, most of them will have very specific noise plugs made. So you can get those made if your kid is going to be in the garage band that they started in the garage and they want to take it on tour. You can get those made, or even for bands. They can get a little pricey, but grand scheme of things, you're probably looking at about $120 if you get custom molds done. And if not, those foam plugs, you can get them in a pack at Walgreens for like $10. So you can also double noise protection. So for my kids who are into shooting sports, there are certain plugs that you can wear, like the foam plugs, and then put the headphones on top, and that will almost double your noise protection rating. Another option, because we get this a lot from military, police officers, is that I don't want to wear hearing protection when I'm shooting because I need to be able to hear what's happening around me, especially if you're in a very life-threatening, dangerous situation. There are certain plugs that are made to when there is a sudden impact of noise higher than, say, 90 decibels, the filter will pop in and you can block out those sounds. So there are options for hearing protection, and that may be a little bit older if they decide they're going to go into law enforcement, or for yourself. That's an option too. And again, any questions, you can call an audiologist and they will point in the right direction. So some of the ways to get your kids to wear them, because they're going to say, Mom, that's so not cool and I don't want to do it. Here's how we can help do that. Much like you would have your kids wear sunscreen and a seatbelt. All of those things can start very young. And if you set the expectation and the very clear rule that when we're doing something loud, we're going to wear hearing protection, you can just set them up throughout their whole life. So shop for hearing protection with them. Go pick it out together. If they want to do a fun, cool color, let them. You can look at the NRR ratings together and make decisions. That gives them a little autonomy over the situation, because you can let them pick. So remember to choose hearing protections that fit with the activity. If they're in band or if they're shooting, whatever they're doing, keep that NRR rating in mind. And then always make sure you have hearing protection in reach. So have it with you. I carry a little baggie of blue foam molds, hearing protection molds in my purse. So I always have it just in case. So always have it within reach, have it in the house, have it in a place where they know where it's at. And then the last thing you can do is be a good role model, which I think is one of the very best things you can do, because if you're out mowing the lawn and you're not wearing your hearing protection, your kid's gonna be like, well, I don't need that either. Or if you're out shooting, your kid's gonna say, well, my dad doesn't wear it, so I don't need it. So those kind of things are really important. So being a good role model for your kiddos. So now we're going to get to where parents can have a little bit more control over how loud their kids are listening to things. I have some helpful apps. So my very favorite app to use when I'm going somewhere and I'm not sure how loud it's going to get is a sound meter. You can put it in your phone. This is my favorite app. It's the Decibel Sound Meter. They have the pro version, which you pay for, but they also have the free version. The free version is awesome. So you can pop that on your phone. You will hit record. It will take a reading and it will tell you like right here, this is 40 decibels, or if it's going to hit 90 decibels or 100 decibels. So you can see how loud whatever activity you're doing is. And then you can know, okay, well, maybe I need my hearing protection with the noise rating of 30 instead of 15. So that's just a really good place to start. I would, if your kids are on cell phones and using that, install it on their phone and have them do a little experiment. Well, how loud is it at the grocery store? How loud is it when they're at the high school football game? So they can get a better sense of how loud things are and when they're loud. The other great thing that I really love, if you do have an Apple device, if you go into your health app, you can look at how loud you're listening to your earbuds, whether that be, you know, AirPods or however they're listening to music. It will take a recording essentially. So over here we have, they're saying this, you're listening to your audio levels loud. How long did you do it? How loud did it get? And what was the range? Over here on the side too, this will also tell you the average of the past week. So how loud they were listening to it for the last 7 days. And you can see, you know, 90 decibels, 60, I think mine right now is like 55 or something. And it's very nice. The other thing you can do with Apple that I really love, if you go into your general settings and go to accessibility and go to audio visual, which is right up here, you can add a notification every time the earphones get too loud for too long. It will send a notification and say you need to take a break. So just some really good ways that you can see how loud, how long, and then also have a little bit of control over, you know, what your kids are doing. So now we'll talk a little bit about some hearing protection and headphones. I linked the article here. This is a really great article. It's from the New York Times, and it's the best headphones for kids. So all of these headphones have a limit on how loud they can get. So the headphones won't even go past 85 decibels. So those can be really helpful. Again, depending on whatever activity your kid is doing, are they using it for school? Are they using it for being in the backseat of the car? This also in the article talks about noise canceling headphones. So noise canceling headphones can be super, super helpful because you'll cancel out your background noise and not have to raise the volume of whatever you're listening to. Great for planes, great for anytime your kid really needs to sit down and concentrate and there's a lot going on. I use my noise canceling headphones all the time, to the detriment of my husband, who, I don't know, he's talking to me in the background. So pros and cons. But if you do have one of those kids that is in the backseat of the car and you're on the trip and they're listening to the iPad and they have it all the way up and you have to reach back and, tell them to turn it down, then these would be a really good option because they're just not going to get loud enough. Over on the right side, I do have a little timetable here that says like how loud and then the permissible limit. So how long should they really be exposed to that noise? And you can really tell the difference here from just 94 decibels to 97 decibels. You cut it in half. So 3 decibels. So decibels matter, again, because that intensity shifts. So that's also maybe a good table to have and to look at. But I really like this article on great headphones. Look at Amazon reviews. There's all sorts of ways that you can find out what headphones are going to work for your kids. My contact information. So if you are wondering what hearing protection your kiddo should get, email me, call me. If you're interested in doing custom, we do that at Heartspring. And really, this is one of the ways that we can ensure that our kids have good hearing for the rest of their life, and they're not going to rely on hearing aids as they get older. Again, if you have any questions, please shoot me an email. But that's all for today. Thank you, Tristan. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you. This was jam-packed with great information. So I hope our families love it.